Well, thanks a lot for staying with us here on Sunrise Live on E. Now, according to research by Worldwide Works, there are an estimated 650,000 small businesses in South Africa and employing about 7.8 million people. Now, these businesses face various challenges in the ever-changing environment. And of course, when it comes to the economic growth of South Africa, one wonders, how do small businesses actually succeed? So joining us in studio this morning to take a look at entrepreneurship as well as where we stand as a country regarding investor issues, regarding capital issues, regarding even business plans. We've got investors as well as serial entrepreneur Vusi Thembekwayo joining us for the conversation. Now, we invite you as always to be part of our discussion. Remember to leave your comments on our Facebook as well as our Twitter pages. Vusi, a pleasure to have you join us in our small home.
Hi, Faye. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. So, issues around businesses. Now, you've put a bit of a spanner in the works, and I think that especially for those who do or those who think of business in a very conventional manner,
Sure.
where you actually start challenging the relevance of a business plan in 2017.
Sure.
Tell us about that stance.
Well, business plans are not relevant for entrepreneurs. You have to understand the genesis of business plans. Business plans were created post the what was known as Black Monday, then the Great Depression in the US, specifically to allow large banks to lend money to large cash flow businesses. That's why business plans are created. That's why the first thing a business plan asks you for is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. If you're in a new business which is dynamic, then those four things by their very nature are dynamic.
Yeah.
In other words, if it takes A1, and then I have 10 taxis, the strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats are very different, even if I'm operating in the same routes, because of the structure and size and nature of my business. So if you are an entrepreneur, my view is, and has always been, and I look at the entrepreneurs we've funded, that I've funded personally, that our firm has funded, who've succeeded and those who've not, is the business plan has not been relevant at all. When you write it, that 80-page document, 40 pages of which is financial projections, right? And you're going to make an assumption about gross margin, then go to the customer and say, I'm going to sell you these bananas at 30% gross margin, and the customer changes the price. That changes the entire plan.
Yeah.
So to be nimble and agile in new markets, which we're in, that document is completely irrelevant.
But then why do agencies, and here's the gripe that I have, right? Why do
you're
agencies...
going to get me in trouble.
No, because we're going to have a real conversation this morning. We cannot have poor people in this country and we don't educate them about the realities of entrepreneurship and business and still expect them to succeed in an ever-evolving environment. Why do agencies, why do banks, why do all of these financial institutions say to you, bring along your business plan? We even have consulting adverts that go, we even have consultants to help you strategize your business plan. Why do we have that?
Oh man, you're feeding me bait, and I'm going to be careful not to take it. Look, show me one CEO of any state-funded agency that has funded entrepreneurs that's been an entrepreneur.
Give me 5.
So that answers your question. Remember, my perspective isn't theoretical. I've just sold my business to US investors. So I can tell you from
How much have you sold your business for?
It's an undisclosed sum, and it
Is
remains
it a
an
million?
undisclosed sum.
We need to be able to encourage excellence here.
Let me put it to you this way. A portion of the proceeds from which I've sold my business, I've taken 10 million rand of my own personal money, and I'm investing it in my own venture capital fund to invest in other entrepreneurs, right? So, because I genuinely believe in the growth of this country. I believe this whole economic hullabaloo we're having will pass. South Africa's been through much, much worse. I'm old enough to remember a time when my parents were paying a bond at 27%, when the inflation was above 10%. So we'll come through this. I'm taking a long-term view about where this country's going. But for entrepreneurs to understand simply that when you go to state-funded agencies, and I say this with the greatest of respect because I know a lot of them, they intend to do good work, but they're driven by dogma, system, and process. That's why they say to you, fill in a business plan. Once you've done it, have you got a website? Once you've done that, do you have a brochure? Your market's changed. The customer's gone. The opportunity's dissipated. You got the tender on Monday. You're supposed to supply on Friday, and they're asking you to write an 80-page business plan to give 100,000 rand in funding. The model doesn't work.
So in other words, the very same people who are giving you or saying to you, draft these strategies, don't even know how a business operates. Those that don't do teach, basically.
Let me put it to you the simplest way I can. If I gave you a 300-page thesis that taught you everything you needed to know about swimming, and you read it over a 5-year period and internalized it, understood it, and memorized it, then I took you and threw you in the depth of the ocean, you would sink. Because swimming isn't a theory thing, it's a practice thing. You have to do it. Entrepreneurship is exactly the same way. You have to
now
be
tell
in
me,
the
where do we
practice of
start?
it.
So now entrepreneurs have got this, again, South African entrepreneurs especially, we're feeding them this sort of bait that they have to have capital. So that every time you have to have capital. The first thing you ask, and I see the Facebook messages as well, so we're going to go to the Facebook comments, is how do I get funding? How do we start changing that mindset? Where should our mindset be, first of all, when it comes to funding?
I'm very public on this, and I've taken a lot of criticism on social media for it, but my view is if you need funding to be an entrepreneur, odds are you're not an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs make it work. When I started, I did one thing to pay for the other thing, to pay for the other thing, so that I could do eventually the thing I want to do. Denzel Washington says, you do what you have to do so you can do what you want to do.
Yeah.
If you need money to start, don't start. Because there are going to be times in your business when there's nobody there to give you money. I remember days when I used to have people in my office. Every month end, I wouldn't have money to pay salaries. Yet I would get on the phone and I would still trade in the business. And then I would phone my suppliers and say, look, I don't have money to pay you, but I still need you to supply me what you need to supply me with. So it's important for entrepreneurs to know that money is an important growth factor. When you need to move from 1 to 10, you need money. But to go from 0 to 1, you don't.
Okay, great. I'm going to take some comments here on Facebook because I've been given these comments and starting again. One, Tashaba saying that what are the various methods of sourcing again, funding, particularly for property development, start off with no previous financial record. They say the NEF is broke while IDC no longer funds the property market. Banks require financial records from a startup. Again, they require financial records, but you're a startup. You're going into, how are you even supposed to win this?
I think with respect that the person who's posted that comment doesn't understand, and I'll make the statement again. If you want to own a chicken farm, you first start by selling eggs. If he wants to be a property developer, he should probably start by getting properties that are available, renting them out, generating a financial track record, generating cash flows, proving he can run a business, learning mistakes, owning 3, 4, maybe 5 flats. Then he can build an apartment building 60 flats. So we have to get the thinking, and I have to say this, we have to get the thinking of black people right. We have to get this right, guys. Well, F&B wasn't built overnight. Neither was ABSA. So how do you think you're going to build a large business which employs thousands of people overnight and someone must give you capital? It doesn't work that way. Probably the single worst thing we did in this country's psyche when we did BEE transactions is we took people that had no money, gave them access to 26% of companies built over hundreds of years and created instant wealth. So now everybody wants instant wealth
because nobody understands the practical tools of actually building those organizations.
You come into my business, I can tell you every single moving part because I built it. I can tell you the IT, the infrastructure, the operations, the HR, the marketing, the finance, the working capital cycles. I built it. Nobody came and it was just there. I built it from scratch. And it's important for, especially, and I'm passionate about saying this to black people specifically, we have to start where we are. We have to start where we are and build with the small steps.
Okay, great. So we've spoken about how perhaps the redundancy of our business plans. We've looked at how we need to start changing our mindset. So now I'm going to ask you the question of where do I start? Be practical with me, okay? So let's use the person that has got a property company, for example. You've got property there. You want to get into the property market. You don't have capital. You are a startup. How do I start? My business plan is redundant, as you mentioned. My mindset is clearly messed up a little bit. How do I start and how do I get this, the formula right?
With your permission, let me use a different example. Yesterday, we got an approach from a young lady who was looking to raise 5 million rand to buy a chicken farm. And the chicken farm she wants to buy is run and owned by white people who want to leave for whatever reason. And she's saying, I want to buy the chicken farm. So I went back to her and I said, what proof have you got of the financial track record of that business? 1, 2, and have you ever run a farm of any type? The answer was no. So here's what I said to her. I said to her, I will give you 50,000 rand to go and buy eggs at a Pick and Pay. Just go to Pick and Pay and buy some eggs. Take those eggs and find people standing in street corners and sell those eggs at a batch of half a dozen each. That's 6 each. So at a batch of half a dozen each, you can probably take that 50,000, turn it into 75. You will do this cycle iteratively until you move it from 50,000 rand to 500,000. Once you've proven to me you can retail eggs, then I might think about getting you into a supply relationship with somebody who creates the eggs so you can buy at a lower cost and keep retailing. Let's start you first on the front end. Once you've gotten to 1, maybe 2 million retailing eggs, knowing who the customers are that buy the eggs, then I might think about buying you a chicken farm, because by the time you have the chickens and they give you the eggs, you now understand how the entire cycle works. But I'm not going to give you 3 million rand to buy a farm and buildings and put eggs in it and chickens and then sit and wait for some miracle to happen.
And then what about people that are watching the show right now and thinking, no, but why are you not doing this? It's all about radical economic transformation. What's your stance on that?
Radical economic... Radical
I feel like I just started you on something.
Radical economic transformation starts in the mind. Why do you think there is no country in the world where Jewish people are poor? You think that's by mistake? Just think about that logically. Why do you think even in our own communities, Indians specifically, Asian Indians who are Muslim, are phenomenal business people? You think that's by mistake? No, it's because the grandfather started with a dry cleaner. When the grandfather passed, he left the dry cleaner to the father, who created a fast food and the dry cleaner. The father leaves the fast food and the dry cleaner with the son, who then creates a hardware store. By the time you go to the township, they've got the entire block and they run it. We have to start as black people by understanding you're not going to get a Range Rover tomorrow. Start where you are, Do what you have to do so you can do what you want to do. And let's celebrate each other's success. And I mean real successes, not the stuff that comes out of the papers. So-and-so's bought this car, so-and-so's at this event. No. If you're at a JNB event, your odds are you're not an entrepreneur. A real entrepreneur doesn't have time to be at those events.
People are clapping right now in the studio.
No,
There's actually clapping that is happening in the studio.
Because a real entrepreneur, I get invited all the time. I'm on the VIP list all the time. I'm never there because I'm trading. I'm running a business. I've got things to do, right? It's important for entrepreneurs to understand entrepreneurship is a difficult thing. You're in the dark engine room building the engine to this car for the first 10 years of your business. But once it's done, it's going to be a phenomenal ride to the end. Real economic transformation for Tena Njengabantu Abamnyama is starting things we own and owning the things we say we own, not being seen to own. It is about time, I think, we need to talk about the perception of success versus the reality of it. If you're driving a 200,000 Rand car and you bought it cash and I rock up in a 4 million Rand car that I owe, who's wealthy?
Me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning.